All right, so look, training camps are opening up all across the country. Dolphins training camp tomorrow. We're at a great time of year. We did it. We finally made it through the summer. That football is right around the corner. And joining us here, we always like when David Canter, super agent, GSC Worldwide, joins us here. David, love having you on the program always. I appreciate you making some time for us here today. And I want to ask you first, we saw earlier today, look, you may be very involved, NFL, all that, but earlier today, the richest contract in the history of the NBA was given out this morning. Jaylen Brown, $305 million.
That's my buddy. Mr. Glushan, the agent, is a good friend of mine.
Okay, but here's the thing. The NBA,
I picked the wrong sport.
Well, so that's what I want to ask.
Yes.
When the NFL players,
I'm an expert in a sport that doesn't give fully guaranteed contracts to their players who risk their lives on every down, and basketball players risk breaking a nail and maybe tearing a knee. Other than that, yeah.
Well, I feel like when the NFL players,
we're all morons. Anyone that plays pro football for a living and doesn't get fully guaranteed money should retire and go play basketball if they were that good.
But
that's not reality.
It must drive the NFL player crazy, right? I mean, Jaylen Brown's a good player, but I'm having the conversation in my head. Is he even a top 20 player in the league? And
I did not know who he was. I am not a big NBA fan, as we've said on the show.
That's the point. That's the point.
But I did not know who he was.
He's good.
Where he played. I couldn't tell you 5 things about him. If he was sitting in my driveway, I wouldn't know who he was.
This must drive the NFL player crazy, the money that the NBA players get, when we know the revenue that the NFL brings in trumps the NBA by millions of miles.
Sure. Well, I mean, also, the argument is well, but there's only 12 to 14 guys on a roster. Oh, but the problem is really if you boil it down and you want to really call it what it is, go take the 53-man roster in the NFL. How many guys are getting paid on that team? About 12. Same as the NBA. The reality of it is the weaker union, which is managed by the union in the NFLPA, gets destroyed on a regular basis at the collective bargaining table by the union in the NBA. They're a tighter knit group. You had guys like Patrick Ewing, led by David Falk, Michael Jordan, the 1980s group of players that really broke the owners and went in and mandated that not only they be paid guaranteed contracts, but they had better licensing and marketing rights. And there's a lot of factors of being a basketball player that don't equate in the NFL. You don't have a helmet. You don't have shoulder pads. People know exactly what you look like. You're wearing a tank top and shorts. Back then they were wearing short shorts. You really knew what they looked like. Let's not go there. That's more like your pro wrestling guys, half naked most of the time. And so, there are a lot of factors as you relate into why the NBA players have much better deals than the NFL players. But, here's a great example. You see Trevon Diggs, one of the premier players at the NFL position, playing corner. At the same time the Jaylen Brown news breaks, his deal breaks. He gets a 6-year deal, 5+1. It's an extension for less than $100 million or $101 million.
A third of what Jaylen Brown just signed. A third.
Not only a third, but probably in real world dollars, guaranteed money. Trevon's number is probably 36 to 50, fully guaranteed on a 6-year deal, and Jaylen Brown's getting $304 million all day, every day, no matter what happens, on less number of years for less service. And oh, by the way, he'll come back to the table and get another $400 million deal. And you can make this argument all the time. Soccer is obviously the biggest disparity. The players and the money coming in from Saudi changes the dynamic. I'm sure yesterday you saw, the rumors that there's an offer for Mbappe to leave PSG, which coincidentally is owned and managed by the same royal family estate. So they're in essence robbing Peter to pay Paul and paying each other with their families. But, $330 million transfer fee and an alleged $700 million salary for 1 year, $1 billion for 1 year. I just played $200 in lotto tickets to try to win the billion and did not win it. Here's my proof. Here's my lotto tickets. Losers, all losers. I'm not a billionaire. I'm talking to my lotto tickets. But yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable to see the NBA contracts. It's unbelievable to see the continuity of, there is almost no drop off, right? Like the one thing that's different in football, is you'll get a starter who gets to free agency or gets to the market, and it's the ether. Nobody wants him. Nobody wants to pay him. Nobody's out there. In basketball, the average guys are making 15 to 20. I tell this story about Kyle Lowry, plays for the Heat, right?
Yep,
Still?
Yep.
Did?
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a Dolphins game last year, and I'm watching players, and I'm talking to this little boy who's with his dad, and I'm like, oh, do you like football? Who's your favorite Dolphin? That's what I always ask kids. And he's like, oh, I like Tua. He's like, I like Jalen Waddle. I like the Penguin, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, is your dad a big football fan? And his dad kind of chimes in. And he's like, yeah, not really. He's like, I know a couple of the guys. And I was like, okay, cool. What do you do? and he just kind of looked at me like I was screwing with him. We're in Miami, by the way.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, somehow we got talking about Europe, and I was like, oh, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I play in the NBA. And I was like, oh, cool. Is this your first year?
First year here, maybe, but yeah.
So embarrassing that I said this to him. And I was like, yeah, one of my buddies works for the Heat, Steve Stowe, is a good friend of mine. He's like, yeah, I like Steve a lot. Really good dude. I was like, yeah, I gave him his first job in sports. And he goes, like, you don't know who I am? And I was like,
funny.
He's like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm a sports agent. So now he really thinks I'm pulling his chain. And it ended up, I told my buddy Eugene Dorfman, who's a huge Miami Heat guy and the king of insurance in hockey and baseball and basketball. I was like, dude, I met Kyle Lowry. I had no idea who he was. I just don't watch basketball. It's not like I'm not trying to be offensive to the guys. I just don't watch the sport.
No, I don't think that's that unusual. Yeah. Unusual. You're a football agent. You're immersed in the world of NFL.
I'm addicted to football and football, the other football. And I literally looked at my phone and I started looking up his average salary per year and how much money he made.
Right.
And I was like, holy shit. Wow. Like, not only have you been in the league 17, 18 years, you've made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, so let me ask you this. So because you're joking around, I got it the wrong sport, NFL as opposed to NBA. How do you make that, or, just in general, how does an agent make that decision? I'm going to do this sport as opposed to doing this sport.
I mean, you got to, for me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I was in my first year of law school. I played college football, and I get pulled over by a cop at a broken taillight, and Lamar Thomas walks out of the gas station as I'm trying to fix the taillight. And I look at him and I'm like, oh my God, you're Lamar Thomas. I was a Miami Hurricane fan. The Afros, America's finest receiver on Saturday. I went to law school at the University of Miami. Football was my passion and my love other than baseball growing up playing it. So for me, my first job in sports was the Marlins. I actually worked, for Dave Dombrowski and the Marlins in 94. But when they locked out the players and canceled the seasons, as I was done, I fell out of love with baseball. To this day, there's still some resentment and bitter towards, the way they treated the players during that lockout and the way the owners. That was really my first lesson, that no matter what these contracts look like, these owners are way richer, brother. No matter, and there's a reason why they call them owners. They're owners. They own the players. They own the league. They own the sport. And so, for me, it was pretty easy to do football first because I knew it. My knowledge base was there. My relationships were there. I knew some people in the NFL. I knew some people in colleges. And then I did want to eventually go and do basketball and baseball and hockey and soccer and my passion sport, which is soccer. It's just too much time. You can't really be great at all of them. There's a few agencies that are successful at all of them. We're one of them. We're number one in golf. We're number two in tennis. I don't know what I am in football, but I'm probably in the top 5 or 7 agents in the industry. But those are different agents doing that, right?
Right.
Like we own the company,
right,
but we have people that run those divisions and run those sports. I'm not going to get on the phone with Paula Badosa and have a intelligent conversation about her playing in China next week or in Germany or, the US Open or Wimbledon or things like that. It's just not my knowledge base. So I don't know tennis like that. I don't know golf like that. Bryson DeChambeau is not going to get on the phone with me and talk about his backswing and, hey, we're doing this Puma deal right now and what it's going to look like. So for me, football sort of chose me as much as I chose it. And then you got to have a passion for it. It's like, follow what you love, do what you love. I say this to the young people that ask me all the time, in this business, like, how do you get in? You got to be willing to sacrifice and not make money for a long freaking time, like maybe 20 years. It might take everybody thinks you're an overnight success. I remember, when I did the first $100 million deal in football back in 2000, and it's in the news today because of the Saquon Barkley franchise deal. We had done what Saquon did to an even better degree back in 2000 with Stephen Davis, and people were getting the facts wrong, and they're saying, oh, Saquon, no one's ever done this. I was like, I did it in 2000. Stephen Davis got franchise tagged. We got him $1 million signing bonus, and we got him 9 categories of incentives that if he hit any of them, they could, which he did, they could never franchise tag him again, which takes all the power away from the team back to the player. And we got him incentives on top of his base, so he would have exceeded even the number that the franchise tag was, which is the only thing they did for Saquon. And so it's like, people don't remember because it's a running back and it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember because I did the deal. And then that's what ended up getting Steven the first $100 million contract in NFL history. A lot of people said it was Steve Young or somebody else, but what's weird about that, Zaz, is when we did that deal, I was 27 years old. I remember people being like, oh my God, you're successful? Like they thought like I was a bum. And then like 5 years go by, and then I had the 7th overall pick in the draft, and people were like, oh wait, you still do that? Like they think like, they think like now you're like an accountant or something. It's like, this is my life. This is what I've done for 28 years, is represent men that play pro football and fight for them and bleed for them and work for them. And so you always feel like you're an overnight success. Like we had a great draft this year, and people are like, oh, you do draft guys? Yeah, what do you I didn't know you had a couple second rounders. Like, oh, you're representing draft picks now? It's like, I've always done it. It's just, it's not like I'm wearing it on my sleeve every hour.
So let's talk about what's going on with the running backs here. Like you mentioned, Saquon Barkley agreed 1-year deal. We've been talking about that today. Are the running backs is it unfair what's happening with the running backs? Is this just the lay of the land and running backs have to adjust? What do you see from an agent's perspective? Is it unfair what's happening to these guys?
I don't know how old you are, but I remember in the old days, there used to be Dandy Don Meredith. Was that his name?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mamas don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. He would always say when the Cowboys would lose a Monday night football game. Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be running backs would be what I would say right now. It's tough, man. It's a glamour position. It's a sexy position because the girls like you. We represented a running back this year who they put his jersey on the statue at the University of Illinois, Chase Brown, this year. And it's tough to say it's over and you're never getting paid, because that's just not realistic. I think you have a lot of factors that weighed into the players that were in this year's situation. One, the Raiders, historically difficult with money.
Okay.
Not a team that is financially as cash flush as some of the owners that are multi-billionaires in the league. Homegrown team, obviously. Al suing the league year in and year out to get them to leave Oakland, go back to Oakland, go to LA, come to LA, now in Vegas. And so the Raiders have always struggled a little bit with cash flows and things that you and I don't think about, or I think about, but you don't necessarily think about, or the layman. And I don't know deep in my heart of hearts if Josh McDaniel is sold on a franchise tag running back that he needs to win in that system, in that offense, right? Saquon, right? Obviously the Giants value him. They need him. They want him. They love him. But you want him and love him and need him until he wants too much money. And then you love him and need him until you can chew him up and spit him out. The other part of the problem is in this business, and we can get to Dalvin Cook, clearly a guy that is a very, very good football player. I can't tell you what he's asking for. I'm not privy to the numbers, but I would assume it's overzealous and overshooting what his actual market would be. Or maybe he's one of those guys that he's like, yeah, I'll just wait until September 1st and somebody will sign me. I'll get my $9 million or $8 million and I'll just phone it in this year and get back to the table next year. I don't know. But the reality of our business is if you're good enough, usually someone will pay you. The franchise tag is the detriment to all of it. And I've represented half a dozen guys that have gotten the franchise tag. Even, here in Miami, Paul Soliai, Stephen Davis, I just mentioned. Olivier Vernon got the transition tag here in Miami. So, I've had my difficult negotiations and especially these. DeMarcus Lawrence got franchise tag twice. They are never easy. Where they are literally the least easy is if you let it become emotional. Saquon and Josh Jacobs clearly let it become emotional. Saquon to the point where he added another agency to help negotiate his deal. Like I've never seen that in my life. And they're competing. They're like, it's CAA and Rock Nation. It's Jay-Z and, the old standard guard in the business that has been around in 100 different 100 different industries. CAA. I can't understand that one at all. Usually too many chefs spoil the soup, and you have to weigh what the players want versus what's in the player's best interest versus what's in the agency's best interest, right? You're seeing that probably right now with the Joe Burrow and the Herbert thing, where two competing agencies both have franchise caliber quarterbacks, both have deals that have to get done, clearly should get done, probably in the $60 million range, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. You could argue, hey, we're waiting to see what Pat Mahomes gets, but you're not Pat Mahomes. You haven't won 2 Super Bowls and been to 4. So I'm bouncing around a little bit about answering your question. I think there were a lot of factors in the running back scenario. I think
I wonder, David, if Saquon wanted, let's say he wanted, multi-years at 15, 16 million a year. Well, it doesn't seem like teams are paying that anymore. And no. I think it's being made to sound like teams don't want to pay running backs. I don't think that's necessarily true. Like, I think if guys like Saquon, if the Giants may have been interested in giving him multi-years at $7 or $8 million per, like, would I be right?
I would say they're probably, I would say they were probably at 12, maybe even 13.
Yeah. So it's not like they're not paying running backs.
Exactly.
The
they're just not paying him top
of
the market. Yeah. They're just not paying him top of the market. It's not a $20 million a year position.
Right.
It's not really a $15 million a year position. Or at least it hasn't been. And you've been able to win here's the other problems, where it's really been a problem. The biggest problem, who's won the last couple Super Bowls?
Well, when's the last time a running back carried it? Do we have to go back to Terrell Davis?
Exactly.
When's the last time?
So the Rams win with basically a hodgepodge of running backs. And then the Chiefs draft a running back in the first round who doesn't even play. Pacheco is a 7th round pick, if I remember correct, who becomes the starter, right? And let's be clear, you're not winning as a Chiefs team running the football. So there's been a diminished value component to running backs. However, the argument is you're not going to win if you can't run the football, right? That's true. You're not going to throw the ball 70 times a game. The team's just going to play nickel and dime and back everybody off, play zone coverage, and you're probably not going to win a lot of games. However, the value of the 1,500-yard running back diminishes when he has 1,500 yards. The quarterback doesn't diminish if he throws for 5,000.
Yeah.
The receiver doesn't diminish if he catches 1,500 yards. The running back, the more they run the ball, the more wear and tear they have.
Yeah, Nick Chubb made that point, and I thought it was a really good point he made.
It's a true point. It's a valid, true point where, and then the other thing is now it's a specialized sport, right? So let's just take this, let's extrapolate this. You and I grew up in an era where the tight ends were the Joe Rose types, right? They could block in line, and then
sometimes they'll catch a pass.
Maybe you're catching a 6-yard turn around, it hits you in the stomach and you fall over. Mm-hmm. Now you're lining your tight end out wide. He's in the slot formation. He's not only able to block, he's able to run, he's able to catch. You're getting him doing slot screens and motion. He lines up in the H-back position. He gets handoffs sometimes. He gets little toss things like Travis Kelce gets. You're putting an unbelievable athlete who's 6'4", 6'5", 250 at multiple places to create mismatches all over the field, right? Mm-hmm. You also still, almost every team, still has a big-bodied extra tackle tight end, right? Mm-hmm. They like their 6'5", 6'6" guy that's 260 that can still block. He can move a lot, move well, but he's probably not going to be 70 catches like a Kelce. Correct?
Yep.
So it's gone specialized. You also used to have the 6'3" wide receiver and the 5'9" wide receiver. And then the Miami Dolphins and the 49ers and some other teams said, we don't need height. We need speed. Let's just get 5 guys, 6 foot and under, and let them run and track meet it down the field, right? What happened with corners? Corners used to be 5'8", 5'9". 6 foot would be like the freak of nature. Then I signed a kid named Sean Smith, and everybody told me I was crazy, by the way. Like, what are you talking about? Guy's 6'4". He's never going to be a starting corner in this league. And he played 9 years starting corner in this league. I think I was right. Now all the corners look like Xavien Howard.
Yeah.
The Bryce McCains, who I represented, are fewer and further between. The 5'7", 5'8", 5'9" guys, they drop in the draft. I just had it happen this year. I had Clark Phillips, 2-time All-American, 6 interceptions, led the nation, captain of the team, character off the charts, smartest kid you'll ever meet in your life, went in the 4th round because of half an inch. Literally, because of his height, because he wasn't 5'10". I'm not exaggerating you.
Yeah.
20 teams will tell you, oh, if he was 5'10", I would have taken him in the 2nd. It's like, you got to be shitting me, right? So 2 years ago, that didn't happen with Asante Samuel Jr. Almost identical height. Asante was a 2, right? I'm sure if you're the Chargers, you're super excited that you got him in the 2s. But there's a difference of the positions now. It's become much more specialized across the board. You don't really have a 5-position offensive lineman anymore. If you do, he's 1 of 10 in the whole league. You have a center that plays maybe guard, a guard that maybe plays center, a tackle that only plays left, or a tackle that only plays right. You're not flopping them very often and things like that because it's just too specialized. And that's what's happened at running back, right?
Yeah, ultimately it sounds like what you're saying. There's nothing unfair. They need to adjust. This is the direction that we're going in. Yeah.
And you might not be getting $15 million a year anymore at that position.
Yeah, it's because like they had the Zoom meeting the other day, and it's like there's this sense out there that running backs are being blackballed. No one's being blackballed. It's just the money is adjusting. Okay. So I want to make sure I get some comments from you about your guy Xavien Howard here. All right. And I know he spoke with the media. I think it was either yesterday or earlier today. He spoke with the media. And it sounds like he's coming in a little bit, David, with kind of a chip on his shoulder, which I don't think is a bad thing.
Yeah, he sure should better have one, right? I mean, everybody in the world's already buried him because of last season. Listen, I don't know, and I've done this for a long time. I've represented, thousands of men that have played this sport. I don't know that I've ever represented a guy who I begged to not play more than Xavien Howard last year. I begged him to not go on the field.
He's playing
like,
hurt.
Dude, don't play. You are hurt. People are going to see shitty film. They're going to think you're a shitty player. There's no memories in the fan bases, right? They don't go, oh my God, he couldn't walk after the game. I saw him in the park. I couldn't even bend over to pick up his son. They don't care, right? You're in between the lines. That means you think you're good enough to play and you should go. So I'm not in the excuse business. I don't get paid to make excuses, and I don't think he does. But it was a down year. He was injured almost all year long from, I think, day 2 of training camp all the way through to even at the end of this season, dealing with groin issues, hamstrings, things that were all intertwined, the hip tightness back. It all sort of relates. He's got a big chip on his shoulder. And I think the one thing that people underestimate about X is his willingness to do what it takes for the team and how badly he wants to win. He wants to win. He wants to be a part of a winner here in Miami. I know the hype train is, geez Louise, every March, April, May, and June. Is there any more team in the NFL more hyped than the Dolphins?
Well, certainly
annually?
this year. Certainly this year.
And I think that I like that the players are saying, hey, chill out. Like, let's not buy into the hype. Let's just go play football. So, I'm certainly excited. I was at Xavien's softball tournament, talking to Jalen and Tua and some other guys on the team. There's confidence there, right? They're quietly confident. I think that Mike has done a good job of getting them to buy into the Mike McDaniel way. I think Vic Fangio is obviously a tremendous coaching addition. They are loaded at a lot of spots, right? I would not want to be the 5th or 6th receiver trying to make that roster right now. We have 4 guys on the team, and there's a couple guys like Canter, Kohu, who last year was the highest graded nickel in football. You might literally have him coming back, and then they're like, well, Nick Needham's back, and we could put Nick Needham in. And we've got this kid, Cam Smith, and he might get some reps and stuff. So, they go 6 deep, 6 deep at least at the corner position. There's legit studs there. There's veteran guys they added at safety, not including the 2 names or the 3 names everybody knows. I mean, they brought in the kid from the Ravens that can play. They brought in Deshaun Elliott. They brought in some wily positions. And, one thing I'll say about Mr. Ross is his checkbook has never been shy. And Brandon Shore and Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel have not been shy at spending the money. And I would assume they're not done. I would assume, you're going to see an extension or 2 before the season's over for some players. Tua, obviously, the concussions is a huge question. You want to pray and hope that he stays upright and healthy for not only for football, but for him, because he's such a great person and a great human being. And you want to see him be successful. But I know just being in Miami for my entire life, more or less, there's no franchise in South Florida that people want to see win more than the Dolphins. If you could say to people, hey, you can get natties for the Canes again, or you can have the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, or the Heat are going to win a sweep in the NBA Finals, or Messi is going to win the gold, whatever it is. I don't know what they play for.
I don't know what they call it. I don't know what they call it.
MLS Cup.
Yeah.
No one really deep down inside cares more about the Dolphins' success in here. And I didn't even include the Marlins because nobody else does. Are they still a franchise? Do we still have a
they're 7 games over 500 right now. Yes, they got an important series tonight in Tampa against the Rays.
Is that a mistake that they're winning? Aren't they supposed to lose and then sell players?
Well, they 2 days ago they snapped an 8-game losing streak. All right, so it is what it is.
After the All-Star break, they start to fade.
Yes, that's what happened. What happened.
Coming around the curve that runs out of gas. The rabbit horse.
That's what happened. David, excellent job as always. Everyone's super excited, like you said, about the Dolphins. Xavien Howard, I love what you had to say there. It sounds like, if he's going to have a big bounce back year, there's not a better duo than between Howard and Jalen Ramsey.
No, I would agree. If Jalen and Xavien and just practicing against Tyreek and Jalen's monsters that are out there, practice of the Dolphins practices, as hot as hell as it is, it's fun to go to. It's like a real competition. There's shit talking. There's guys that are trying to get each other better. They're good teammates. They want to win. There's a camaraderie there that you would be surprised at. I think going into year 2 of this thing, we're hoping for a big jump. But by the way, the freaking Jets got Aaron Rodgers. The Bills aren't going to get worse, right? The Patriots think they're going to be in it somehow every year as is. So this is a tough division to win. Every game is going to be a battle. Obviously, huge game in Germany this year, right?
Yep.
The Dolphins play the Chiefs in Germany. My gosh, how lucky did they get over there for that game? If anybody wants to send me a business class ticket, I'll get them on the field for the game. I love Germany, and I love going to football games overseas because it's a spectacle. But that's besides the point. I love being overseas. It'll be exciting. I hope Xavien has a healthy year. I hope the Dolphins have a healthy year, and I'm excited to get out to practice and see what they're all about. It's tough to really know. Everybody goes, they had a terrible practice. Oh, this guy dropped the ball. You don't know what they're doing, what they're experimenting, what they're running. Let's judge the Miami Dolphins in week 8 before we judge them in the 3rd day of practice.
Excellent job, David. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it, man.
Anytime, my brother.